Okay, it's about as far as I can get the camera away from my ugly face, so sorry. I'm going to be trying making a video again about wa and ga. Hopefully it'll be better than the last one. Last one I was making it at 11 o'clock at night. I made it kind of on the spur of the moment, so it was probably a little bit unclear, and I was really quiet because I had to be quiet because my daughter was asleep. So hopefully this will be a little bit better and a little bit easier to hear. Anyway, so we're going to talk about wa and ga just as subject markers. Okay, so just as when they're used to mark a subject that belongs to a verb. That's it. We're not going to talk about how wa changes for, you know, to make things negative. We're not going to worry about that, or things are negative. We're not going to worry about how ga pairs with certain verbs instead of o. We're not going to worry about that. We're just going to talk simple about wa and ga at very basic about how they're subject markers. Okay, so the first thing that we need to know is where do the wa and ga come from? And one problem that we'll have lots of time in Japanese classes and Japanese textbooks is they just lump particles into one group. Like everything's a particle, and they don't distinguish between particles. But if you study classical Japanese, you have to divide the particles up in order to make sense of them. And so what we have then, I think there's 5 different kinds, I believe, in classical Japanese particles, depending on who you're reading. But if you go from Shirane, he's a professor that's pretty famous, I guess, does lots of classical translations and anthologies, and he has a book called a grammar. Hold on. He has this book. It's called Classical Japanese, a Grammar. Haro Shirane. Good book if you want to study classical Japanese, but if you don't understand wa and ga, then you probably won't be doing that yet. So let's just talk about this real quick. We're going to talk about 4 different kinds, really simply, okay? You have case particles. Case particles, and basically what they do is they show case only. That's the only function they have. And what case is, basically shows is a function of a word in the sentence. Okay, so the case particles basically show how a word works in a sentence. And for example, ga is a case particle. And ga, if ga is attached to a word, it shows the case of that word, and it's showing that that word is the subject of the sentence, basically is all it's doing, showing its function in the sentence. Then you have bound particles, and basically what they do is they add meaning to the sentence and to the word that they're attached to, while also marking the place in the sentence, its function in the sentence often. Then you also have conjunctive particles, which basically just link clauses. Things like in modern Japanese, ba, or something like that, right? Or like keredomo or something, right? And then you have final particles, and these are simple. These are just like they are in modern Japanese. They attach on the end of a sentence, and they show the speaker's attitude. Like for example, like yo as an exclamatory particle, or they show, like for ka, they show like it's asking a question or something like that. So case particles. Ga is, and anyway, the whole point of showing this is that we know that ga is a case particle, like I just said, and wa is a bound particle. So automatically we see this and we say, oh, it adds meaning to the sentence. And guess what? We're not just going to talk about wa and ga, because we have to talk about one more particle if we want to make sense of these two. And that particle is mo. And I think everybody understands mo. It means also, right? Just like almost like in English, almost exactly the same as in English. It's a simple one to understand. Mo. Mo is also a bound particle. Why is mo a bound particle? Because mo is not like ga. Ga just says that this word belongs to a verb in the sentence, and this word is the subject of that verb. That's all that wa means. It doesn't add any meaning to the sentence at all. Just tells you how that word functions. That word is the subject of a verb. But mo says, it implies that the word that's attached to is included in with other subjects. So I say, watashi mo iku. I will also go. Or I am also going somewhere, you know, somebody's party or something, right? So that means that I'm not the only subject that's going to be doing that verb. Other subjects are doing that verb as well. And Japanese people use that not even literally. Sometimes they don't even necessarily use it literally. They just use it as sort of like a way to make things inclusive, you know, just in a sort of a metaphoric kind of way, I guess. So mo is a bound particle because it adds meaning. It shows that the thing that it's attached to is a subject. Not always. Sometimes it's also attached to other things. But in this case, it's attached to the subject of the sentence. It shows that's the subject of a verb, but it also shows, and it puts a nuance on the verb, or the noun that it's attached to, because it's a bound particle and it adds meaning. And wa is also a bound particle, and it also adds meaning. But the important thing to remember about wa is it's the opposite of mo. If mo is inclusive, I don't want to say wa is exclusive, but kind of. Think of it this way: mo is plus, and wa equals minus, and ga is neutral. Okay, so ga doesn't add any meaning. It's just telling you the subject of a sentence. Mo is plussing the word that it's attached to other subjects, to either subjects you've been talking about, or subjects that are understood. And it adds that subject doing the verb with the other subjects. And what wa is doing is it's marking its subject as the only, or amongst the understood subjects at least, the only subject, the only noun that is doing that verb. Right? So you'd say, what's a good example? 彼は行くけど私は行かない. He will go, but I will not. So, and lots of times, even in classical Japanese, that's a function of wa also, is that a parallel, sort of, you make parallels with two different clauses, and just like that, you say, this person isn't going, or no, I said this person is going. 彼は行くけど私は行かない. So he is going, but I am not going. And you use wa in that case because you're contrasting the two subjects. So what wa kind of does is it contrasts the subject it's attached to other subjects, and usually that's the understood subject. And sometimes, because you don't even have to necessarily say that. If you just say, if people are talking about going, you say 私は行かない. It means, oh well, you guys might be going, or other people might be going, but I'm putting other people aside and what other people are doing aside, and I'm telling you that I am not going, just me. I'm only commenting about me. Whereas, however, if you wanted to say, for example, other people are like, well, I'm going, and then somebody else is like, I'm not going. Someone else says, oh, I'm not going to go. You say, 私も行かない. You are not saying that just me. You're saying, oh, like the other person that just said, or like the other people that aren't going, that said they're not going, I'm not going either. So does that make sense? Mo, you're plussing the subject onto other understood subjects or previously mentioned subjects. And while you're minusing or excluding the subject from previously mentioned subjects or the understood subject. And when you use ga, it doesn't do anything like that. All you're saying is that when you say 私が行かない, that kind of sounds actually sounds kind of odd, I think, but in this case, but because it's just a statement of fact, and you usually don't just say something like that, like I'm going. You're usually going to say I'm going also, or I'm not going, or I'm going when they're not going, right? So the other people say I'm not going. You say 私は行くよ. Say, oh, I am going, and you're separating yourself in that case from the people who aren't going. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully somebody watches this, and because my other video, hopefully this is better than my other video. So anyway, that's wa, and if you get a chance, please watch some of my other Japanese lessons. And that'll be it. Thank you.